You're listening to the Unfixed podcast.
I'm on my boat rowing. Everything feels good in my body. I don't have any tremor. I feel strong and powerful and smooth. And that's when I feel sort of back like my old self. As soon as I stop rowing, my tremor comes back.
Hi, everyone. This is the Unfixed podcast, and I'm your host, Martel Catalano. The chronic illness community often talks to each other, but in this show, we open the dialogue, exploring adversity through different walks of life to recognize our shared humanness. These intimate conversations are between people who are creatively contending with diverse challenges. One person has a chronic health condition, because they're often experts in facing the hard stuff. The other is a professional working within a relevant field or facing their own unique battle. Each episode is an invitation to lean into curiosity and compassion while recognizing that we can live powerful lives despite, or sometimes because of, our circumstances. This podcast is part of a suite of resources provided by Beyond My Battle. If you feel inclined to support the show, you can do so at beyondmybattle.org/donate. That quote we opened with was from Todd Vogt. He's a subject in the award-winning video series called Unfixed. Todd first began rowing as a freshman at the University of Buffalo. He immediately fell in love with every aspect of the sport: the physical and mental challenges, the training, the team atmosphere, and being on the water. He rowed all throughout college and continued to row competitively for several years afterwards, medaling at the U.S. National Championships. Just before his 44th birthday, after developing a tremor in his left hand and foot, he was diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's disease. For many, this would be the catalyst to change direction in life. And for several months, this was Todd's thinking. But rowing was an inescapable source of joy and purpose for Todd, so eventually he figured out how to continue his chosen path with necessary adaptations. In 2019, U.S. Rowing invited Todd to the Paralympic training camp in Boston, which eventually landed him in a two-person boat that finished 6th place at the 2019 World Rowing Championships. He is now training full-time to qualify for the Tokyo Paralympics in the summer of 2021. While we often pair people in this show who are meeting for the first time, today we're excited to have Todd and his Paralympic coach, Susan Wood, share a conversation together. Susan worked as an associate engineer before immersing herself both creatively and professionally into the life and art of competitive rowing. She coached for multiple rowing teams on all levels before becoming an Olympic coach in 2004. Alongside coaching, Susan also studied photography and became an official photographer for U.S. Rowing, traveling with the world's top coaches and athletes. A few years ago, when Susan was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, she realized that the skills she developed over nearly a lifetime of coaching could also be applied to how to deal with life. Relaxing and letting go, she says, allow life to take her where she needs to go, in rowing, in photography, and now as an MS patient. She's now intensively training top Paralympic contender Todd Vogt for the 2021 Paralympics. Together, Todd and Susan are here to explore their history of rowing and coaching together, their present-day Paralympic training, and what it's been like for them adapting to their diagnoses as athletes. Todd and Susan, I am so happy to have you here with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Martel.
Thanks for having us.
So it's so cool that you guys already are this amazing team. You undoubtedly have so much joint wisdom, and I'm sure lots of stories to share. But let's just jump right in because, you have quite a history together. But a few years ago, when you crossed paths, I know that your relationship took on an entirely new dimension. Can you tell us the story about that day and what it has ensued since then?
Sure. I'll start, I guess, because I remember that. It was like This was August of 2018. Probably like must have been late August because I had just been diagnosed formally like a few weeks before that. So I don't know how I got invited, but I talked to Susan or her husband, and they invited me on. They were going for like a long bike ride with a group of people. So I asked if I could tag along, and met him. We went for this long bike ride, like 40 miles of riding, or not that long, depending on your perspective. And during the ride, at some point, I just remember mentioning to Susan that, and her husband that, I'd been diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's disease. And Susan, that's when Susan let me know too, that she'd been diagnosed with MS. So yeah, it was kind of the fateful day, I guess you would say.
Yeah, I remember that day. It was the Veronia bike trail. Is that right?
Yeah, Banks to Vernonia.
That was a really great day. And you and I had coached together many years ago. And so I hadn't really spent much time with you since you returned to Portland from Wisconsin. So it was fun to kind of, hang out with the bike ride, but it was really kind of shocking because I was kind of hiding my diagnosis. And when I heard that you had Parkinson's, it really broke my heart. But I remember saying I was just diagnosed with MS. And it was like, I don't know, it's like the two of us were so invincible in our days of coaching, and all of a sudden we both have this little flaw in our armor. So I remember having a shaky handshake. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we both had a small tremor going on, and mine was different, of course. But I just remember feeling somehow very connected in that moment.
Wow, that must have been surreal in that moment of shaking hands, to just feel your history together, and then also learn that you've both embarked on a whole new and different chapter with your bodies, separate, but in some ways, eventually it would be together. But I have more of a personal question. Todd, I'm wondering if you can just kind of set the stage here for people who aren't familiar with Parkinson's. And, I run a support group, and there's a guy that comes quite often who has Parkinson's. He's local here, and he talks a lot about exercise. Like, he loves going to the gym. It is like COVID has been so hard for him because his main source of joy is, I think, swimming in his case. Like, he loves to go to the pool.
Oh yeah, all the pools are closed probably too.
The Y had closed completely here for a while. And anyway, but I'm reflecting on like the importance of movement. And I'm wondering if you could like let us know about, is there something about Parkinson's that moving the body and exercising settles the tremors, or what's going on there?
I get asked this question a lot, and I don't know. I think the simple answer is probably yes. I do feel better after I exercise. But it's not as much, to be honest, it's not as much as I would hope sometimes. The good thing about exercise, especially for rowing at least, it's like, it's physically demanding, which is supposed to be, great for delaying the onset of disease. But the other thing that's really helpful too is rowing, especially in my one-person boat, in my like little scull, is really technically demanding too. It requires a lot of like finger dexterity. So that probably, when I'm rowing, so all that coordination that's required probably is really helpful too. So, and I think the thing that I like personally is that when I'm actually rowing, my symptoms, I don't notice my tremor. Well, my tremor goes totally away. And so I feel sort of normal when I'm actually in the process of rowing. So as opposed to the rest of my day where my left hand is trembling and my left arm doesn't really swing and my body doesn't work as well as I would like it to do.
I'm imagining you both spend a fair amount of time with other athletes, and I'm wondering what it's like sharing your diagnosis with others. Like, how do they react? Do you feel like you are able to integrate your more private experiences of, illness and disability into your more social and athletic circles?
For me, when I state that I was diagnosed with MS, most people don't really know what to make of that because it is different for every person. And I tend to kind of mask how it affects me. Things like I cannot see in the dark anymore. So suddenly I have to alter my whole life so that I'm where I need to be in the daylight. And that it's amazing in the winter how much that affects you. I was embarrassed to say anything because I don't want to be given any pity or anything like that. So I just try to pretend that I'm just fine. But what I have discovered I need to do is just really simplify where I direct my energy and my time. And sometimes I have to be really gentle to not be hard on myself if I'm not accomplishing like I used to accomplish just 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think I want to echo a lot of the things that Susan said. Is that I try to when I just go through my daily life as it's as if I didn't have Parkinson's, but it's impossible to not. Obviously, it consumes. It's hard to not get away from that, like pretty much all the moments of the day, because it affects the way it affects my body so much. It's so visible. I would say when I'm around, friends or family or other who could be other athletes, I'm not. It's so obvious that I have there's something wrong, just because my tremor is so noticeable. So it almost feels like it's hard to. I can't hide it entirely, and it doesn't mean if I'm interacting with other athletes, I talk about it. It's just it's there, and it's everybody pretty much knows that there's something going on with me. So because it's you can't not notice it if you're hanging out with me, say getting breakfast after a workout or something like that. So
do you think it makes people look up to you, or maybe like the opposite? Like, what do you feel like their response socially is to that?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I would assume it's probably a little of both. It's probably people feel sorry for me for having this, neurological condition at a fairly young age. And probably some of them, look up to me as like some sort of inspiration, which I get. That's not, and it's funny. A lot of these like media things I've done, like other podcasts and blog articles for various like organizations, that's like the pitch. And I don't know. I realize that it's like inspirational, but that's not necessarily my motivation. I mean, my motivation to do this is like really just internally driven. So, for my own, see what I can do. So.
Yeah. I mean, there's two conversations there that have came up in your responses that I feel like we have a lot within the organization that I run. And the first one that came up was like, I always wonder between invisible illnesses and visible illnesses. Like, there's no right answer to this, but like, what is actually more socially difficult? Sometimes I, think having it on the surface takes away the mystery. Like, you can't hide it, so it's just there. Like, it takes that away. But then also, like, obviously having an invisible illness, like you can hide it. Like, you can get away with doing things and pretending things.
Yeah.
So I always like wonder that. Like, it's a pointless conversation to have. Obviously, like, which one is more difficult? But I think it's not necessarily a conversation about difficulty, but a conversation of like, what are the pros and cons of each, and how can we find the silver lining in each of those things? And yeah, like Susan, I related so much to what you said about not having your vision at night. Like the disease that I have, I'm losing my vision to a condition, and the thing that I noticed first in my early years of, I was like 13 or 12, was that I had no night vision. And I totally get that. And like having to explain that to other people is kind of tiresome. Like it's invisible. That part of it is so invisible, unless you're, I guess, like with me at a bar and I'm talking to a wall, which has happened more times than I'd like to admit. But to explain like the intricacies of the invisible nature is like, it can be exhausting. So like, I don't know. I don't know if either of you have any thoughts on that.
Well, when I'm going about my life, or when I'm coaching, or when I'm painting, when I'm doing anything, there's things that I struggle with that I will occasionally, I will need to ask for help. And that's hard to do because I'm always been a very capable person. And when you ask for help, it makes me feel like I'm less. But what I've learned through all of this is that asking for help is actually a strength. and kind of owning that I can't do this. I need some assistance. And, I still row and compete myself. And I know that when I was training last year before the pandemic to race, it's like I had to be straight with my teammates and just state my limitations. Or when I'm coaching Todd, it's like, well, I can't coach when it's really foggy because I can't see because of all my floaters in my eyes. So it's the pros and cons of it not being visible fall to the fact that someone whom I have not seen for a while, or someone I don't know, or they look at me and they see the same person, but what they don't really know is the struggle inside of me to not trip and to not be startled constantly because I don't have peripheral vision. And so it's my anxiety level that I try to keep calm and not show too bad with other people.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I so relate to that. The disability can be what it is, but it's the like fear of the degeneration, the progression, the what if, the tripping and falling, it's different for every condition, of course, but it's almost more paralyzing.
When to direct to the other part of your question, when I work with Todd, I see Todd as the whole person, and I actually kind of view Todd similarly, if not the same, as when I worked with him coaching a number of years ago. Todd has these, what I call superpowers. He connects well with others. He's super sincerely interested when he speaks with other people. He remembers, the details, and he takes the time to listen. When he asked me to work with him as a coach, I didn't even hesitate because of his unmarked enthusiasm. He's just totally loves this sport, and so do I. And so it kind of allows both of us in this next chapter of our lives to just continue doing what we love, which is the sport and analyzing it and figuring out how to make it the best. When I talked to Todd about perhaps some limitations that he has now that he didn't have before, he had limitations before, that he worked through. So a lot of it is just thinking of the fact that Todd is Todd and we're working through it.
Yeah. I think that having a illness or disability, it definitely helps you realize that every person has their stuff. Healthy, unhealthy, you see the whole person, you see their trauma, emotional, psychological, mental, physical, all of it. And everybody has, something going on for them. And I think that having a diagnosis really opens our eyes to that even more so.
Yeah, it definitely gives you perspective on your life and other people's situations, I'd like to go back and mention, we were talking pros and cons, because this is something I think about. If there's such thing a pro and con, but having one disease versus another, it's probably all con, but some cons are different from the others. Point of this is that I find with my situation, it's easier, with people I know well, who friends or family. It's I don't try to mask my symptoms, or I just try to be myself. And if my hands are trembling and as I'm walking awkwardly, or I don't feel as self-conscious, but the challenge that I have that drives me crazy is say I go to the grocery store, and the cashier at Trader Joe's or Whole Foods is talking to me, and those are the situations that make me uncomfortable, because, you get self-conscious that you look like some weirdo, and that's the thing that drives you crazy. So
isn't it crazy that we care so much? Those are the things that drive us crazy, and we're never going to see that person again.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I was just thinking that as I said that, I was like, that's ridiculous that I should feel that concerned about what the cashier at a coffee shop is going to think.
Oh, so. I've had cashiers totally make me cry. Not they make me cry, but the reflection of me handing out my, them handing me my change and me not being able to see it, and them being like, hello, you idiot. And then and I'm never going to see that person again. But I don't think it's so much that you're never going to see that person again. It's just a reminder of is this what I look like, on the, is this how I appear or present myself on the surface? And, But yeah, it's so unimportant at the end of the day. It's a great point, Todd. Most high-performing athletes would, probably describe themselves as tough or capable or relentless in pursuit of their peak performance, whatever that means for them. But have those qualities evolved in you with your diagnosis, or does toughness or strength or endurance mean what it once did? Like, has that taken on new meaning for both of you in your work?
I think one of the things I liked about rowing, as you mentioned in the intro, is the physical challenge of it. And rowing is considered generally like a pretty physically demanding sport. And rowing doesn't, corner the market on physical challenge like running and swimming and cycling. And a lot of endurance sports are, painful and demanding. And rowing certainly is as well, falls in that category. So I think that's one of the things I liked about it was especially the physical challenge of the sport itself. You spend a lot of time on the rowing machine as well, especially in a place if you're anywhere where your body water is frozen in the winter. So you spend a lot of time on the rowing machine for training. Probably most rowers spend probably at least a quarter of their weekly training on the rowing machine, which is a real challenge because the rowing machine especially is really mentally tough because you've got this number staring at you and it tells you exactly how fast or slow you're going. And a lot of times coaches will evaluate rowers based off their score on the machine, on their time on the machine, on whatever workout it is. That's one of the things I think really appealed to me was this seeing how hard you can push yourself, seeing if you can continually get faster or, compete against the rest of the team. So I still feel like I have that ability, that I enjoy that part of it too. And it's changed a little bit. I don't know. One thing since Parkinson's is that this is more of a physical thing, is that my perception of fatigue has changed a little bit. I don't know. It's like harder for me to push myself to like the depths of to really beat myself up as I used to be able to. I don't know if I'm articulating this well. I've had to almost relearn how to really dig deep and really figure out how hard I can go and how hard I can push myself. And it's less of a physical thing. It's less that my body is capable. And it feels like more of my brain just doesn't want to go to the same places it went before. So I've had to almost relearn how to push my boundaries, so.
Susan, do you have any thoughts on what those words, tough, capable, tired, endurance, strength, what do they mean to you as a rower, as a coach? Have they changed in your mind over the times coaching Todd or, having MS?
Yes, I would say it has. I've coached for a long time, so there's an inner dialogue in my body that I can tap into. And so it's been really advantageous for me to work with Todd because I feel like I can open up this huge treasure chest of information that I've developed over the years and put it to a great use of working with and helping Todd. The ways that it has changed for me are, MS is different where it's different for every single person and you basically treat the symptoms and not really the cause, but I can't articulate my words as quickly as I used to. I kind of struggle a little, but when I'm coaching, it seems to just kind of flow. And because I'm kind of in this space of focus and I'm faced with a direct problem that I want to solve, I want Todd's boat to go faster. How can I do that? I need to encourage him to do this one little different movement. What words can I find to click with him? So, a lot of these things are the same with coaching since I've been coaching, but what's different for me is kind of just being, in a way, more patient with myself, with finding the answers to the solutions of how to make the boat go faster. And I limit what I put my time and energy into because I can't do as much as I used to. I can't multitask so much. But with Todd, he's mentioned to me that, early on when I started working with him, that he was struggling with entering into that pain chamber like he used to. He said there was something inside of him that's holding him back and he didn't recognize it and didn't know what to do. So I feel like, that's one element that has been interesting because I can relate to that, but finding a path for Todd to work through that. And I'm sure that every athlete, every person with whatever physical ailments they have or don't have, we all have our challenges and our roadblocks. But I think with it's kind of a project in a way, working, I feel, Todd and me together towards kind of finding a path around those obstacles.
Has working with Todd and has Parkinson's diagnosis changed the way you coach in general?
I think so. I think I look at this is actually one of my problems, is that I struggle with, my brain is going a mile a minute, but I can't find my words. So I prepare for the coaching. I look at a lot of video that I shoot of Todd, and I look at video of other elite level athletes, and I have that solid image in my head, and I try to share that image with Todd. So I'm working with different ways to achieve what I want, if it's looking at an image or it's helping him keep an arm straight. So I, we'll like add a stick to his shirt so that his arm, he's reminded not to bend it too soon. So it's like just trying different solutions to get around different roadblocks. And this is the hard part for me, because I, when I'm on the water coaching, or I paint now too, and when I'm painting, I'm really relaxed, and I can get into kind of Todd's head and the boat and what makes it go. Visually, I just intuitively know it, or visually I intuitively know what color to mix to make some object. And when I'm sitting here trying to speak with anybody outside of that, I struggle. That's one thing that's really changed with me with MS. And that's hard. That's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's MS is, you're right. It's so interesting how it presents itself so differently to each and every person. But it's good to know that you can go into the zone, that hyper-focused place.
Well, when I'm coaching, I'm out in the motor launch right alongside, and I have a small cone that I speak through so that Todd can hear me. And so it's almost like a conversation when we're going along. It's like he has these tools in his boat to give him real-time feedback in numbers as far as what things are going well or where he would like to improve it. And I'm looking visually at it. So together we're solving how to make the boat go faster, how to help him to work through the pain chamber. So there's a lot of tools we use.
Yeah. I like that term, the pain chamber. It sounds like it's like torturous, but I totally get what you mean. I probably haven't been there in a while, but I, back in my sports days, like totally understand. That's a tough place to make yourself like want to go for your entire life, but it's worth it. So Todd, how has your diagnosis changed how you train? Are there, adaptations that you've had to have made, or is it really just that the feelings of the diagnosis go away completely, so it hasn't changed the way you train at all?
I think there's a couple of things to that sort of speak to this. First thing is my body does move differently, and I feel like it's impacted sort of the way my technical approach to the rowing stroke. So before I actually was formally diagnosed, when I was having symptoms, but before I was actually diagnosed with Parkinson, I remember thinking like my rowing stroke just felt really weird. I was getting fatigued in parts of my body where like I wasn't supposed to be getting fatigued. And so I knew I was like doing something was wrong. I just feel like my stroke was off, and I couldn't and at first I didn't understand what was going on, but then I got diagnosed, and then it sort of made sense. So there's like the disease like affected my rowing stroke, which was a bummer in some regard, because I rowed for, I've been rowing for like 20 years. I felt like I spent a fair amount of time like trying to refine my stroke, and I had like a distinct feeling in my mind of like what a good stroke should feel like, and then suddenly I no longer felt like that, which was a really a bummer at first for, a good 6 months after I was diagnosed. Well, even longer. I mean, I feel like I'm just starting to get around some of these obstacles, but that's one of the things I've noticed between having, being diagnosed and, being where I am now.
So have you adapted to that, or have you just tried to force the stroke back to the way that it was? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think the reality is it's probably the latter part of that question, is that I've been probably just, through practice and diligence and having Susan there, like having somebody telling you like, okay, keep hold, press longer with your legs. Like it's just brute force. It's almost like relearning my stroke to a certain extent.
I have one question here that I think is a really, a great way to kind of wrap up this conversation. It's been said that coaching is a good metaphor for life, and you've both been coaches at points in your life, or you're coaches right now. So I'm wondering, like, do you think that that's true, and what does it mean to you?
Well, I think one thing that made me think about was sometimes as an athlete, you can't really see the forest. You're just banging up against the trees and you're trying to do something. But as a coach, you can kind of see the forest and you can share your perspective as far as the training. And sometimes I'll ask Todd, well, what would Coach Todd tell athlete Todd? So trying to put yourself, into the coach perspective, so that, I'm saying, Todd, you need to this is a recovery week. Let's take it a little bit slower, and he's just the athlete wanting to go hard. And so I have to say, hey, Todd, I wanted to talk to the coach, Todd, for a minute. What would you tell your athlete?
Yeah.
So it is, coaching is a little different perspective. You're looking at the whole picture and trying to keep the balance of body, mind, and spirit for the athlete and for yourself.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot. Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment. I think that's one of the things that you try to do as a coach is figure out what's going on with the athletes and, how you can help them best, So whether it's some technical feedback or some encouragement, or like Susan said, you're trying to be like look out for them, be like the brains of the operation. So you can see the big picture that's going on with them, with school or with life or with physical conditioning, things like that. So I think that if you're, as a coach, you try to really assess the situation as clearly as possible to try to help the athlete. So
another aspect I would think about too, as far as coaching being somewhat of a metaphor for life, is that we are all constantly facing an obstacle in our path in any way. And a lot about how we develop our own character and who we are is how we respond to those challenges. And so as a coach, I'm always looking for options. What this approach didn't work. How can I kind of come in the back door to try a new approach to connect and make a difference? So, sometimes putting those own skills to myself, I need to sit down and coach myself and say, okay, let's take a look at the whole picture. It's a healthy way to kind of put your emotional self out of it and look at the facts and look at the balance. And I'm a firm believer in balance. And so that's one way I feel that coaching is a metaphor.
Well, this was such a great conversation. It was just so great to hear from you both and hear the coach perspective, the athlete perspective, and really the overall adversity perspective. So thanks so much for joining us, and Todd, good luck with your training.
Thank you. Yeah, it's going to be exciting this year, one way or the other. So
thank you, Martel. I appreciate you having us.
Thanks, Martel.
Listeners can learn more about Todd and Susan by heading to the episode page on beyondmybattle.org or unfixedfilm.com. The Unfixed podcast is a collaboration between Unfixed Media Productions and Beyond My Battle, a nonprofit helping people reduce the stress of illness and disability. If you want to learn more about the Unfixed documentary, visit unfixedfilm.com or subscribe to the Unfixed Community YouTube channel. As always, if this show or particular episode resonated with or helped you in some way, please leave us a review or share with your friends and family.